What's up YouTube? Doe here from Zephyr, and first off, very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays and all celebrations. So today what I thought I'd do is I thought I'd bring you a video just to talk to you about the best decks for beginners. So the decks that I'm going to list off, basically what I kind of look into as the criteria is the overall budget of the deck and of course the simplicity of the deck as well. So you can kind of learn it, get used to the normal mechanics of the game and then work your way up. If not, starting off with this particular decks, you can then make them as competitive as possible and go very, very far. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell and subscribe so you do not miss out on any more upcoming content. So first off, what we're going to do is we're going to start with the most basic of the decks out there, and that's basically a deck that does not require you to rely on an extra deck. So it means what it does is it takes you back to the bare basics of just normal summoning and tribute summoning. And that one is of course going to be Flunderies. Now Flunderies are just as competitive as anything else, and it does allow you to play quite a lot of hand traps. You'll also be able to implement that into your game plan. Whether you are coming back from a massive hiatus and when you played was the original Yugioh and Kaiba structure decks, or if you are brand new to the game as well, it's definitely one of them decks that can pick up and you'll start to learn different ways of being able to chain block to protect your particular monsters, as well as just standing with the basics of normal summoning, tribute summoning, and then interacting with your opponent during their turn more times than not during your own as well. So a very basic deck. It is very cheap and easy to pick up, and once you get the know-how and the insides out of the way the deck works, you will be able to compete with this deck as well. So next one up is Exosisters. Now what I'm doing with these decks is we're going to keep adding a new element to each one on top of it, just so you can kind of see how each one of them grows from the predecessor. So with Exosisters, again, this does allow you to play a very good anti-meta hand trap in the form of Dimension Shifter, while also being able to focus mainly on XYZ summoning. So unlike Flunder, what this will give you is this will give you the upgrade in order to understand special summoning and then starting to use the extra deck more times than not, utilizing stuff specifically like XYZ summoning. The deck can be considered as underdog or rogue in the upcoming format as well, and the best thing about it is it will allow you to compete with some of the higher ranked meta decks around once you know the inside and outs. Again, it does allow you to have a little bit of space to play hand traps. You will be able to learn that very important component of competing in Yu-Gi-Oh! Like I said, it does focus on XYZs, but it also gives you that ability to learn stuff like OTK plays, as well as defensive going first lineup plays, as well as interacting and playing through different forms of interaction from your opponent. It also has a nice balance between trap cards, spell cards, and of course overall monsters on the board as well, as keeping the budget very, very cheap and easy to pick up. The next one we're going to be moving on to is Red Dragon Archfiend. Now the best thing about Red Dragon Archfiend is this did have its own structure deck. Now the reason Red Dragon Archfiend is the next one on this list is what we're now adding a full-on aggression output. So with the Red Dragon Archfiend, you're not protecting yourself as much as you would with something like Exosisters, but you are playing a lot more on the aggressive route, trying to play with a lot less. On top of that, it does also introduce you to the Bestials should you decide to play that particular version of the deck. And what that's then going to give you is, again, more cards that can interact with your opponent on a more in-depth scale. It doesn't allow you to play like an anti-meta hand trap in the form of Dimension Shifter, but it does give you enough space again to learn the fundamentals of hand traps, interacting with your opponent, as well as allowing you to have a difference between, well, do I like the XYZ mechanic or do I want to play something a bit more synchro orientated? In my opinion, I feel that the synchro-orientated aspect is a little bit more complex than the XYZ aspect, because XYZ, within reason, is pretty much, okay, cool, I've got two monsters at the same level, they can overlay and make an XYZ monster, whereas with synchros, you're like, right, okay, I've got a monster that can manipulate its level or manipulate another card's level in order to try and get to this number that I need in order to make my synchro summon and then bring one back. I also need to make sure that one of my materials is at least a tuner, and then everything else then needs to add up to the rest. I feel that the benefit that Red Dragon Archfiend has as well is the fact that it came in a structure deck. So again, it's a very nice and easy pickup. Definitely something that could be bought for you for Christmas. If you're like, oh, I want to get back into Yu-Gi-Oh! Can you buy me some structure decks? What one should you go for? Well, Red Dragon Archfiend is a badass looking dragon. And then you also do have an option that is further on down this list, and that is of course Fire Kings. So moving into Fire Kings quite nicely on this one, Fire Kings is a very good deck. It has a very nice balance, and the difference between itself and Red Dragon Archfiend is it does have a lot more variety options. So when you are trying to build something like Fire Kings, if you are just going to buy the free structure decks, what you're going to be focusing on is you're going to be focusing on summoning during your opponent's turn, more so than during your turn from the extra deck. So that's when you're going to be looking for with the XYZ summons and being able to kind of destroy your opponent's board. The other thing that Fire Kings will also give you is you have to be starting to learn the difference between destruction effects and being able to resolve them during different phases as well. So it does give you a very important kind of learning curve of the next standby phase, this standby phase, end phase, and everything else. When you start adding in other components, whether you're going down the budget Sinful Spoils engine, whether you're going down Dogmaticas, or of course Tri-Brigades, it then opens up more avenues for you. Whether you want to go with a Dogmatica route, which relies less on the extra deck, but you do need to be selecting specific extra deck monsters in order to get the right synergy that you need, or if you want to go down the Tri-Brigade version, which does give you a very nice introductory route into Link summoning and all the other different ways that you can summon from the extra deck. On top of that as well, when you are considering the Sinful Spoils engine, that will start to give you more range of increasing the investment into a deck. Because with the Sinful Spoil engine, it's only going to get better over time, and that's where you can kind of start somewhere and then test out the different variants and then work your way up. So that's the one thing the Fire Kings have in comparison to the rest of the decks that I've already mentioned, is Thunderies is very one-dimensional. It goes straight way through all pretty much Winged Beast type monsters. And then of course you look at Exosisters, very XYZ focused, and then you look at Red Dragon Archfiend, very Synchro focused. But then when you look at Fire Kings, it can be a deck that can play without the extra deck or a very minimalized extra deck. And then it can be a deck that focuses on XYZ summons. It could be a deck that focuses on Link summons. And it also has a very nice balance, as well as going first and second options alongside graveyard recurability and of course resource management. The next step we're going to be moving into is kind of on a different kind of spin from everything else. So as you can see, previously mentioned decks are mainly aggressive, but this one we're going to talk about is of course Traptrix. Now I feel Traptrix is probably one of the best for beginners just because it keeps everything so simplistic. It gives you a very nice introduction into how Link summoning works. It also shows you how some XYZ plays can be made. It then gives you that great balance of, yes, the deck can be slightly combo, but it can also be very, very controlled with a lot of back row inclusion as well. It doesn't introduce you to much of like the spell element, which is a deck we're going to talk about in a second, but it does kind of introduce you into a lot more control aspect where you're going to be comboing during your turn and then controlling during your opponent's turn. So you're getting the best of both worlds, as well as having a nice underlying balance of hand traps within that as well. On top of that, Traptrix was a structure deck, so you are able to pick this up very, very cheaply. And my overall kind of advice for all of the decks I'm going to mention on this one, when you're looking into the decks, make sure you're also picking up the baseline staples of stuff like Ash Blossom, Infinite Impermanence, and then any other relevant hand trap for the format. The Rarity Collection set is probably one of the best sets we've had in a long, long time, specifically to help out with that particular aspect. And that's when you're going to be looking into either buying a box of that stuff for Christmas or just ultimately going out and spending a little bit less money just to get the low rarity playsets of everything else that you're going to need for those staples going forward. On top of that as well, when you are looking at the other structure decks, you can also consider stuff like Fire Kings and of course Traptrix that do come with their own inbuilt staples, stuff like Evenly Match, Infinite Impermanence, and of course Droll and Lockbird. So the best thing about Traptrix is, yes, they give you a lot of control and they do kind of miss or have a more restricted route into an OTK push. But again, that is something with a bit of time and a bit of practice, you will learn how to adapt and how to make it as competitive as possible. Moving on to the next one, where we talked about traps with Traptrix, we're now going to talk about spells with Runicks. Now, Runicks are a very hyped deck at this exact moment in time, but previously to that, it was about £60 to get everything you needed. And what Runicks introduce you to is Runicks introduce you to like a very good spell element of the deck, as well as utilizing the extra deck. It does allow you to focus less on the extra deck and less on the battle phase itself, and it's more about controlling both senses. You want to be able to get resource management and draw capabilities during your turn and your opponent's turn, as well as being able to interact with your opponent with the right spells during their turn. It will introduce you into the quick play element of the spells themselves, as well as field spell reliance. Then it comes down to the other elements that you're going to add into the deck. Whether it be the bestials, which again gives you more hand trap relevant interactions, or whether it just be out and out stuff like sprites, live twins, you name it, you can have a bit more of a combo orientated route as well. So it does give you a very nice balance of control, as well as giving you a nice aggressive output and combo orientations. Moving on to the final deck. Now the final deck on this one, again, is Swordsoul. Now with Swordsoul, what I really like about this is it does give you a very nice introduction to synchro orientated summoning, as well as giving you a balance of being able to draw, protect, and hand traps. It's got a nice line of back row with the trap card, as well as a lot of consistency with stuff like Tenyis. Now, I'm not saying that this list has been put into any particular order, but the reason that we've kind of looked at Swordsoul is I feel that it's one of them decks that gets underlooked quite a lot currently, and I do feel that it is relatively cheap and easy to pick up. It's a very nice introductory deck, and most players outside of the structure deck kind of element have decided to go for something like Swordsoul, just because it does give you that ability to utilize the synchro element quite a lot, while also giving you the ability to learn stuff like burn damage, allow you to kind of burn through special summoning with the form of the Tenyis, as well as kind of controlling the board state with blackout and all the other spells that the deck can utilize as well. So, going over the overall list again, of course, we talked about Swordsoul, very nice, synchro-orientated with a good balance of going first and second. Exosisters giving you XYZ focus. Traptrix giving you a nice bit of balance between control, but mainly focusing on the trap aspect, and of course, combos. Red Dragon Archfiend being a very nice introductory to synchro-orientated decks, but being a lot more aggressive and unbalanced in comparison to Swordsoul. Fire Kings does have a very nice variety, whether you want to be more control orientated, extra deck focused, or of course just general future improvement aspects as well. Then you can also consider Flunders. Flunders is just one of the bare basic decks. Now, I'm not taking anything away from it, but it does kind of give you the simplicities of the game. If you're like, Link Summoning kind of frightens me, I don't feel that I understand it quite right, and I don't feel that I understand the whole fusion aspect, or of course the synchro aspect of all the types of decks, then Flunder is probably the best one to go into at the base level, and then you'll start to work your way up into the other decks itself. Runick, again, quite like Fire Kings, has a very nice variety of everything else that it can play and be used into. It's also a very good introductory to spells. Another deck that we did consider on this list, of course, was Branded. Branded is a very nice fusion-orientated deck. The only issue with it right now is currently to kind of build it the way you want to and want to utilize something like Quem. It can push your budget to the little bit of an edge, but Branded is still a highly considered deck. It's a little bit more difficult to get the free structure decks as of right now, but you should be able to pick up singles of everything you need or a full-on core relatively cheaply if you are interested in the whole fusion archetype. And on top of that, also the lore aspect of the deck does give you a nice little draw in for it as well. So I hope this has been a very nice kind of included video for all of you out there. I know a lot of you have been saying that you've been coming back to the game thanks to the Fire King structure deck, so I thought it'd be good for more returning players to kind of understand what type of decks are out there that you could pick up on a very nice budget, as well as learning different types of mechanics for the decks and the game in general to bring you back into it and then evolve and adapt from that point on. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. Merry Christmas as absolutely always, and we'll catch you on more videos in the future. As absolutely always, stay safe, and of course, happy dueling.